Hello, beauties. I hope you're doing fantastic. We are still continuing with some of the housekeeping items from the end of 2022. And with that said, today I'm going to talk about 12 palettes that I consider the best palettes that I tried in 2022. If that sounds good, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Now let's go into the video. So how I essentially went about doing this was I was thinking to myself, which palette I'm likely to want to take on a trip with me, which palette, if I take on a trip, I can make eye looks for multiple days with the palette by itself, and that the palette has the appropriate quality and pigmentation, and that I could make a variety of looks with it so that I wouldn't get bored using the palette by itself over a course of multiple days. So obviously a lot of palettes that I traveled with have made the cut because I picked them up to go on trips with them. So you're going to see a lot of those. A lot of people might say, well, okay, this made the top of the stack for you, but we don't know what was in the stack that you didn't choose, because obviously saying this is the best I chose doesn't mean anything if you don't know what the total of the stack looked like. And for that reason, I made another video where I'm going to show you all the palettes that did not make the stack. So that video is going to cover all the palettes that I used that came out for the first time in 2022. I removed any palette that had come before 2022, but I tried in 2022 just to reduce the size of the stack. Also, beauties, before we get started, I made this eye look with one of the palettes we're going to be talking about. So if you're curious, keep on watching. With that said, number one palette, and before I give you number one, I do want to mention that these are in no particular order. It's not very easy to rank things because that essentially is going to be a measure of saying I like this color story more than that color story, and I don't know if I can really do that. I find that a very challenging exercise to do because my mood and my interest in a color story might change by season, might change by day, might change by the size of a palette that I want to take on a trip, depending on the need. So these are in no particular order. And number one is Follow Your Dreams from Saints, Angels, and Sinners, friends. I've talked about this palette plenty of time. I feel like I've said it all in the past. This is a favorite color story. I absolutely love this palette. I think the quality is fantastic. The colors are very exciting. For every one of these palettes, I want to talk a little bit about what I would change if I could even improve the palette a little more. And in this case, if I could improve the palette, I would probably replace one of these two reds because I think they look too similar. I would probably replace them with a very light color. If you look in the palette, you notice that there is no real like inner corner highlight if you want to make a very light look. So I would probably opt for removing one of these reds and replacing it with a light color. Another option would also be maybe reducing the number of teals in the palette. I feel like maybe these two colors are a little too similar, so maybe I could replace one of them with a lighter color. Even saying that is a little bit being nitpicky. This palette I absolutely love. I have made a plethora of eye looks with it. I have made very grungy fall looks. I have made very cool winter looks. I have made fun pink looks. Absolutely love this pink color. I have talked about how much I love that color. I think you guys see gold from my angle. I see pink. Let me see if I can show you the pink shift. Yesterday, I actually made a sunset look with this using the orange or the yellow, this brown and this purple over my lid. Oh, beautiful look. And I think the day before that, I used this palette, used some of the greens, and then I put this color Wanderlust across my lid, and it was just so beautiful. Can't say enough about this palette. I love it. Second palette I want to talk about, friends, again, no ranking, this is just random orders, is Bard from Fantasy Cosmetica. Although this palette only has 9 colors, I have made a plethora of looks with it. I have done very neutral leaning looks with the yellow, this one, and this color, and putting one of these as a shimmer. I've also made super funky looks using the blue, using the red, this red as well as this orange. This pink is a duochrome, like pink to gold, and this blue looks literally like liquid glitter. There's no glitter, none of this. This is all just colors. There's no actual like crunchy glitter or anything, but it's just insanely shimmery. Yeah, and I think it is one of those like purple to blue. I do have a video with this palette. In that video, I made 3 looks. Love this palette, friends. Don't sleep on it. I also think it's fantastic price. That's why this palette made the cut. But if I were to change something in this palette, I might have talked about this in my video as well, is that I would add a light color to this palette. Essentially having all colors that are in the L seem a little redundant to me, and I think maybe I could either remove this color or this color. This color itself is also a pink to a gold, but light pink to a light gold. I don't know if you can see that duochrome, multichrome thingy going on. It's insane. So I don't know if I want to move that out, but you know, maybe I could remove the orange, because I could probably make orange with the red and the yellow, and maybe I could replace it with a lighter color, or perhaps they could have opted for a lighter yellow. The only issue that I had with this palette, again, was when I was making looks, if I didn't want to keep using the same color as this one in the inner corner, then I would kind of run out of colors to put in the inner corner. Now, the palette's also a very small palette, so maybe that's understandable. But if I had to be very nitpicky, that would be one thing I would change. The next palette, friends, is Dollhouse. This palette was one of the biggest surprises of this year for me. I absolutely enjoyed using this palette, and the quality, honestly, of all of the Blend Bunny palettes that I've used, and I have at this point every single one, other than their highlighter palette. What's the name of the highlighter palette? Noctilucent. I have all of their eyeshadow palettes. And I believe this is the best quality palette that they have. I think this is a fantastic palette for anybody who either loves neutrals, or anyone who's a neutral lover who wants to start incorporating colors into their look. So this palette absolutely gives you the flexibility to use more or less neutral colors, and then maybe use a little bit of blue, maybe use a little bit of pink, maybe use a little bit of purple. Another thing that you can do, and I think it's very difficult to see because most of the colors in this palette are neutral, but you definitely can do colorful looks with this palette. You have this orange, you have this burgundy, you have this purple, you have the blue, and some of these other colors that I mentioned. So the surprise of the year for me was this palette, because when I looked at it, I thought this is yet another neutral palette, but in fact I actually managed to get a good bit of color out of it, and that was very nice. Now, I do have a video with this palette in my channel as well. I will link that if you're curious. If I were to change something about this palette, do we need all of these colors? I don't think so. I think this brown and that brown and that brown could have been replaced with just one brown. And you also have the black, so you could always have the lightest brown and the black, and then whoever wanted to create all the range of browns could use the black with the lightest brown. Maybe this could have been a military green to match the other colors in the column. This one could have been a little bit more orange, again, to match the other, like a brick orange. So a cross between this color and that color. I mean, of course, that's a shimmer, but you know, a little bit lighter than this and more brick orange type of color. Also, these two colors are very, very similar. These two colors are again very, very similar. Did we need all of them? Probably not, but it is what it is, and I continue to like this palette and I continue to use this palette. The next palette that I want to talk about is a palette that's no surprise to anybody, and that is Serenity from Cosmic Brushes. Of course, this palette is in this video because this palette is kind of the palette of the year. Everybody's been talking about it. I have traveled with this palette. I traveled, I believe, only with this palette when I went to Poland for work in end of October, early November, and I did not feel like I was missing anything. Of course, while I was in Poland, I also ended up shopping at glam shops, so I ended up acquiring more makeup that I used and looks and so on. But this palette, I think by itself gives you a lot of flexibility for different kinds of look. I do have a video with this palette, just assessing the palette, and in that video I do 3 eye looks. I'll tag it here if you're curious. Write down to me below if you want me to do more eye looks with this palette or any of the other palettes that I talk about. I would love to do that for you all, because I think this palette is extremely flexible, and I think people might not realize that, because I recognize that these colors might be a little bit out of the average person's comfort zone, but you can do complete purple looks with this palette. You can do green looks with this palette. You can do blue looks with this palette. You can do very matte look with this palette. If I were to change something about this palette, again, obviously I'm not going to say change the quality, because if the qualities were not good enough, they wouldn't even be in this position. But if I were to change something about this, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of having a matte black in every palette. And we've seen, and we are going to see a lot of matte blacks around here. I'm looking at the other palettes just to kind of mentally see to myself how many of these palettes have matte blacks, but a lot of them do. So that is something that we kind of need to figure out. Another thing was that these 4 colors, maybe we could do without one of them. I do feel like maybe we didn't need all of these mattes. I'm not 100% convinced that these colors would look that different on my eyes to merit having every single one in this palette. This shimmer is a very multi-chromy, duochromy type of shimmer. I think you can see in the viewfinder that this is, or in the screen, that this kind of has a hue of gold. It would have been good to have a shimmer or a matte, like white or a matte cream, or something that would be a little less funky than this, because if you're trying to make, say, very professional looks to go to a meeting at work and you don't want to be super funky, you can make those kinds of looks, but it would have been nice to have a, you know, yellow or a cream, either just blank shimmer or matte also. But friends, I really like the color story of this palette, and even saying that, it's a little bit hard for me. Like, I probably wouldn't change anything about this palette. Yeah, so definitely highly recommend this palette. Also super cheap. This palette is 20 British pounds, which is very, very cheap. That's almost $20, friends. The next palette, friends, that I mentioned earlier, I've already done this eye look with, is the Ambiance palette from Ace Beauty. This is the inside of the palette. I bought this palette during Black Friday sale, and I have since played around with it. Now, friends, I love playing around with Ace Beauty's matte formula. The colors that they usually put in their palettes are very nice. Just look over here. These grungy fall colors. I mean, I honestly would even buy a palette that would just be this top row. I mean, that is an insanely grungy fall palette for me. Or just the matte colors in this palette. So these 3 along with these 5 colors, so all 8 colors, that by itself would make a fantastic palette for me. Now add to that all these very nice fall pumpkin grunge looking shimmers, and I love this palette. I know why I slept on this palette. I did not have a very good customer service experience with Ace Beauty. I do want to mention I didn't have a bad experience. They just never responded to one of my inquiries a while ago, earlier in the year. Now, you know what? Maybe they were just super busy. Maybe they were flooded with messages. I also didn't follow up after my first message. But after that, I was like, do I want to purchase from Ace Beauty? And I didn't purchase from them for a while. But the truth is their quality is very good, which made me say, I like this brand. Let me give them another shot. And I'm so happy I gave them another shot. If I were to change one thing about this palette, I would add maybe a lighter color to this palette. On my eye right now, I have both of these colors, and from close up and I think in the viewfinder, I see the clear difference between the two colors, but I'm not too convinced that you can see the difference in the two colors on my eyes. And then the question would be, do we need both of these colors and both of those colors? Maybe we could swap one of them out for a lighter color. I love this color. This is such a unique brown, like aubergine type of color that you don't see very often. You all know how much I love my unique shades. So that color shouldn't go anywhere. Or maybe replacing the gold, but friends, right now the gold is the lightest color in the palette, so I feel like saying replace the lightest color with another light color isn't going to do anything. Or maybe the black. Do we need a black color in every palette? I don't know. But I do feel like maybe we could do a lighter matte color in this palette. By the way, friends, before I forget, I want to quickly show you my nails. They're very Christmassy and they have the little gingerbread man on them. They're super cute. I'm losing track of numbers, but you're going to see on the screen what number we're at. And the next palette I want to talk about, friends, is this one. I also have a video on my channel with this one. So when I saw this palette for the first time, I was like, that palette is just so confusing. What kind of eye look can I make with this palette? In my video that is on my channel, I broke this palette down into smaller chunks and then I made eye look with those chunks. Doing that made me realize how flexible this palette is. I'm continuously amazed by the creativity in this color story. I use these 4 colors for I think in my video for a professional look that I went to work with, and I feel like I got every single compliment from anybody under the sun for that look, because this palette has some super deep jewel tone colors as well as lighter colors in it, as well as having enough neutrals. This is a flexible enough palette that you can use just for fun, as well as being able to use it for professional office appropriate looks for people who might not be able to wear fun colors to work. Yeah, I love this palette. I can't wait to use it more. If I could change something about this, and I think I mentioned this also in my video, I would figure out what to do with these 2 blacks. I already don't think we need even 1 matte black, let alone 2 matte blacks in a palette. I would probably replace one of these, if not both of them, with lighter colors. I feel like just having this matte white, although I love having the matte white in the palette because it helps you either lighten up other colors or just use it by itself in the inner corner for a very matte professional looking eye look, but at least 1 more light color would have helped, because if you look at most of these shimmers, they're not that light. Like this is very kind of pewtery. These are pretty deep. I would definitely add a light color, probably matte, to this palette. Friends, continuing with the next one, and that is Nocturnal from Glamorous. This should not be a surprise to anybody. This is one of my favorite palettes from 2022. I feel like the palette is super comprehensive. It allows for a lot of type of different colorful, grungy, as well as just matte, down-to-earth type of looks. Again, friends, matte black. Talking about what needs to possibly change in this palette is that this matte black could be replaced with a light matte color, or honestly even a light shimmer color. Also, did we need both of these colors? Maybe we did, but maybe one of them could have been replaced with a different color. But separate from that, absolutely love this color story. Can't rave enough about this palette, the quality of Glamorous' brand. Yeah, I'm gonna shut up now because I know I keep talking about Glamorous in this channel. Before people come after me, I'm gonna stop talking about it. The next palette, friends, is no other than Adept's collaboration with Heather Austin. Heather has done a fantastic job curating this palette in such a way that you have enough variety in the mattes as well as the shimmers. One of the issues I've had with other Adept palettes, I have Ninhydrin as well as Plain Jane. I believe in those 2 palettes, the mattes are just blank, like neutral browns. So they're kind of useless, frankly. don't serve a whole lot of purpose. And I believe Plain Jane is all shimmers. So it's sort of like you can't really use the palette by itself, which is one of those reasons why that palette usually misses the mark in my rankings. Let me kind of do this to see if you can see the shift in the colors. This palette does not have that issue. This is one of the probably first palettes of the year that I started traveling with. I go to Vegas for work periodically, so I needed to do some very down to earth professional type looks using these more neutrally type colors. And then it is Vegas, so you want to also do some fun, you want to go out to dinner and so on. And then I use some of these other colors for doing more funky looks. But then even the mattes allow for you to be able to mix and match with some of these other shimmers to create a variety of other looks. For example, you can use this purple to blue, which is that color in the middle. I think you all see blue, but if I do this, you can see the shift is purple. Yeah, so this color definitely gives you a lot of variety. You can do a look with that one in the outer V, this one in over the lid, maybe this color. I think you all see white, but that color is actually has a pink shift. I think you can see the pink shift in the mirror here. You can put that in the inner corner. If I were to change something about this palette, I feel these two colors look a little similar. Maybe we could do a matte light or dark mauve. I think having done a matte light or dark mauve could take this palette even to a different level for you to be able to get more out of it. Now, Adept did release both dark and light mauve, I believe, in the Minka palette. So if you have that palette, you can just pop one of those colors out and put it in here and see if that's going to give you the results that I'm talking about. But just talking about this palette by itself, that is my humble opinion. Okay, friends, we're getting towards the end, and these are the last four. So the very last one is going to be the surprise of the year. But number 4 is Sorcerer. So this is also a release by Fantasy Cosmetica. This is released earlier than Bard did. This palette, similar to Bard, huge surprise. Although 9pan has allowed me to create plethora of looks, you can do very pinky purple or blue purple. Or today I made a green look with this palette using this color and that color and a little bit of the blue. But if you use more of this green, you can use a little bit of the blue in the outer V or a little bit of this purple in the outer V just to deepen it out. And then if you use all of this green over across your lid, it's going to kind of hide the fact that you have purple in the outer V. And friends, these are truly multichromes. I don't think these are duochromes. Like this color is green to purple. Let me see if I can show you in this. I was wearing it today and it's like a green to pink to purple. It's just crazy. If I were to change something about this palette, I would probably pop that color out, that pink, and replace it with a light color. Again, you all are gonna say, you keep talking about light colors. Seriously, friends, we need a little more light mattes in our lives because at the moment I'm not too convinced that we need all 3 colors that are here. So I would say take the medium shade out, and you can get that medium shade probably by mixing these two, and replace it with something that's light. And this palette also has the same issue as a lot of these other palettes, that if I want to use something other than these two in my inner corner, I'm not going to be able to do that. And these two are both sort of multichromy, so if I'm trying to do an all matte look, I kind of can't get away with that. But separate from that, this palette is fantastic. I've traveled with it. I absolutely love it. I actually just realized I've traveled with Serenity twice. I went to Michigan with it in September, and I went to Poland with it. Okay, friends, the third palette we're going to talk about is Cocoa palette from Saints, Angels, and Sinners. Similar to the other palettes we talked about, absolutely gorgeous color story with enough flexibility to go colorful as well as very neutral. I took this palette traveling with me for end of year gathering in Vegas that my company had, and I managed to do the full professional day looks using these neutral colors and a little bit of these shimmers on the lid, as well as the funky night looks using just shimmers with the blues and I love this burgundy. But again, friends, this matte black. Matte blacks just gotta go. What's this revenge of the matte black? They just gotta go. Anyway, this color, friends, I think you see a pink. It's actually one of those pink to golds. Saints, Angels, and Sinners has fantastic shimmer colors. In fact, they have many palettes that didn't make the cut that I own. And the reason they didn't make the cut is because they're all shimmer. I mentioned I don't do all shimmer palettes in these rankings because the palette should be cohesive by itself. I should be able to make plethora of looks with it by itself. These shimmers are just beautiful. This blue, I'm just gonna quickly do a little bit of a swatch for you. These are just super beautiful shimmery colors that you can use both as toppers as well as just by themselves. You can use in the inner corner, you can use over the lid, you can just honestly, I feel like Lauren May Beauty would have said you could just pop it on the lid and just go out for your day. Now, I'm not a one shimmer look type of person, but if you are, you could totally do that. And the fact that they have multiple types of them also helps because you can do a more green leaning look with these 4 colors. I remember in Vegas I made a look with these 4 colors, or you can do more pink leaning using that color and the burgundy, or more blue leaning using these 2 colors. So there's a lot you can do. Of course, this black gotta go. Friends, if I were to change one thing about this palette, first of all, this matte black we already talked about. Second, do we need both of these colors? I'm not 100% sure, but maybe we do. Another thing is, between this color, and this color, I would probably pick either 1 or 2. And then I would replace one of them either with a very light color, and I would say maybe a light shimmer. I'm thinking something like maybe a cream color. I'm just thinking if you're making a very business professional type of look and you do have enough neutrals to make that kind of a look, you want to put something very mild in your inner corner. You don't want to put super funky shimmers in your inner corner. I might, but you might not. So I would probably replace it with a cream. Of course, you can also always replace it with a cream matte instead of a cream shimmer, but I would probably do a cream shimmer. Or alternatively, you could do a dark blue or like a dark purple, something else to allow for this palette to go very colorful. Currently, we can do a little bit of color. We can go a little bit of stretching the bounds, but it doesn't allow you to go all out on color. Maybe replacing the dark black with like dark purple or dark blue would allow for that. Or a dark green, friends. This palette is a little bit St. Patrick's themed. Dark green could do too. And friends, number 2 for us. I feel like some of you can guess which one it is, but that is no other than Glamorous palette by Glaminatrix. This palette is another palette that came out later in the year. Teals and reds and purples and magentas. Yeah, these are my colors. I do have a video doing eye looks with this palette and reviewing it, swatching it, all of that on my channel. If you're curious, definitely check out that video. Thankfully, this color is not a black. This color is a deep burgundy, and it's a beautiful color. I just love it. You know what? As much as I don't like a full matte black, I love colors that are like kind of black with a hint of a different color. So I'm so enjoying having this color. But if I were to change something about this palette, what I would change, and I think I might have mentioned this in my channel, my video as well, is I would probably replace one of these 4 colors, likely one of these 2, for a lighter color. Again, friends, we're having the same light color issue. There aren't enough light colors in this palette for me to be able to make a statement, for lack of a better word. So what I think I had recommended was maybe changing one of these two with a very light pink, because that allows you to, you do have a kind of a light teal, but you don't have a light enough pink or purple, either a lavender, very, very light lavender, or a light pink. I wouldn't want to say light white because that would be boring, but something light so that if I want to put something in my inner corner, I don't have to use this yellow, because this yellow is very funky. It's one of those, love the color, but it's one of those that has a green hue on top. This one, kind of same thing. It's a beautiful green. Let me see if I can capture the shifts in the beautiful green. It kind of has a blue hue, but if I want to put it in the inner corner, it's going to make a funky look. So if I want to kind of do all matte look and I want something in my inner corner, I'm going to not be able to do that. So that would be my take, but I still love the palette. And last but not least, friends, we get to the number one surprise of the year, and that is Palatopoly. I did not even want to buy this palette because when this palette came out, I looked at it and I was like, that is a very confusing color story. I ordered this palette during Black Friday sale just because it was on a heavy discount. And I believe it was on a heavy discount. Now, this is, I don't have any insider knowledge or anything. This is just me thinking to myself. But I think this was on a heavy discount because if I, being such a color lover, thought to myself this is a confusing color story, I can't imagine what the average person out there who doesn't even love this much color would think. But friends, when I got this palette and I opened it, I was like, this palette is insane. This palette is so beautiful. And it's actually not as confusing as I thought. You can make a variety of looks with this palette. I feel like when my brain sees blues, I also kind of want to see teals. I also kind of want to see greens with them. And I think that was what was confusing me. But this palette actually stretches the bounds a little bit. It's one of those palettes like this one that makes me now think, oh, wait, my brain can't decide what to do. And because I can't sort of cognitively make that kind of a decision, then it's going to be taking me more time to decide. But when I received the palette, I realized that there is a logic that you can use. Obviously, you always use the pinks with the purples, and then you can obviously always also go up and down in using these colors. But this palette was honestly the biggest surprise of the year because separate from the quality that has been fantastic, I very much enjoyed using it and making different kind of looks with it. I could make very conservative looks just with the browns or with the neutral colors or with these sort of ochre type colors, as well as super funky using the blues, using the pinks, and so on. People, don't sleep on this palette if you think you can make this work. I recognize it's not a color story for everybody, but this is absolutely gorgeous. The palette does come with a game, the Palatopoly game. I have not even gotten that game out of its packaging. I can't really comment on the game. So during the time that I've had it, I did a couple of eye looks to work with it. I used some of these purples with a couple of pinks just to kind of have a more professional look. I also used a lot of these neutral colors and mixing the ochres with the brown neutrals, and that also turned out very pretty. You can also use these sort of more magenta-y. You can mix those with the pink, which I'm guessing is normal, but I also mixed some of these blues with the purples for eye looks. These shimmer blue colors are pretty unique. I've never seen in any other palettes. I also really liked this row. The good thing about neutral colors is that neutrals, hence the name neutral, can almost be used with any other color without a lot of issues. So you can always use these neutral colors with either pinks or blues or anything else. I also want to mention these two shimmers are also very beautiful. This shimmer together with some of these browns for like an office friendly look, friends, it's just so beautiful. I'm so excited I purchased this palette. But with that said, we come to the end of this video. Write down to me in the comments below, what palette did you try this year that you consider your favorite palette of the year? Of course, I kind of have a feeling a lot of people are going to say Serenity just because everybody has been trying to get their hands on that palette. But even if it's Serenity, write it down in the comments below just so that I know. Am I missing out on something that came out in 2022 that I should go pick up? Thanks again, lovelies, for being here with me. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and subscribe to my channel. If you're not subscribed already, I love you all. Have a fantastic day and until next time. Bye.